Now before I begin, I would like to make it clear that I absolutely love NGE Evangelion. It's one of my favorite anime of all time, so this video isn't a NGE Evangelion versus Rebuild of Evangelion video. But instead, the point of this video is trying to explain about why Rebuild of Evangelion is and isn't like NGE Evangelion. Why? Because it seems as if Rebuild of Evangelion is misunderstood, or at the very least misinterpreted to be something more than it actually is. And personally, what Rebuild of Evangelion is building upon is as much as Evangelion as NGE Evangelion. And it's more the case that certain people only want to latch on to a specific part of NGE Evangelion and claim that's what NGE Evangelion really is about. And that only long-time fans of NGE Evangelion can understand why. Now, I will admit that I'm not a long-time fan of NGE Evangelion, and the reason for that is because I've never been much of a fan of mecha, nor am I to this day, but after years of my good friend recommending NGE Evangelion, I finally watched it. And speaking from experience, with the series I did watch as a teen, I'm glad I did, since if I had watched NGE Evangelion as a teen, I probably wouldn't have liked it very much. Now, I consumed essentially everything Evangelion there is, yes, even the doujins. The only exception being the NGE Evangelion video games. So while I do not have the experience of a long-term fan, I am a die-hard fan of NGE Evangelion. With that being said, one common complaint is that Rebuild of Evangelion is a carbon copy of NGE Evangelion. Now, I won't dispute the claim too much when it comes to Rebuild of Evangelion borrowing heavily from NGE Evangelion, since they both are related to the Evangelion universe. The problem with this claim is that there are too many differences in Rebuild of Evangelion, and as the movies progress, the less it feels like a cardboard copy. Crossing over the new angels, new effects and even location, it's not hard to notice a distinctive difference, which both reminds us that this indeed is a Evangelion movie, only that it isn't NGE Evangelion. One such distinction is that the story has been altered from small instances such as Unit 1 not saving Shinji from the falling debris, but instead Shinji helps the injured Rei, which only happens in the manga, or how Kaji never gets assassinated by Sele. Another distinction is that the characters are different in both their goals, their personal interaction with other characters, and of course their emotional well-being. Shinji, Rei and Asuka are much more glued together, where instead of Shinji asking if anything can love him, it's as if he's too occupied now with caring for both girls, although Rei being the favorite due to him being drawn to his mother. And even though Shinji is still as dramatic as before, he actually does seem to have some happiness inside of him. Now, of course, these are just small examples of the distinctions between NGE Evangelion and Rebuild of Evangelion. Because in the end, the point is that even if it were indeed true that GAINAX were trying to do a cash grab, I don't think it was very smart of them to give Studio Khara the right to make the Rebuild of Evangelion movies. But regardless, this is actually not why I was motivated to make this video. Instead, what motivated me to make this video is the fact that people complain that Rebuild of Evangelion is lacking narrative. The issue with that complaint is the assumption or rather notion that NGE Evangelion's only merit is that it has a narrative, and in turn completely disregard its story, animation and to a degree the characters. Because that is precisely the point of Rebuild of Evangelion. Instead of being an exact copy of NGE Evangelion, it instead wants to try to focus on areas which wasn't explored as much in NGE Evangelion, such as the Evangelion world and character interaction. We do see similar character interaction in Rebuild of Evangelion between Asuka, Rei and Shinji as we do in NGE Evangelion. However, most interaction isn't done with the same analytic and symbolic interaction NGE Evangelion is famous for. To summarize the character interaction, Rebuild of Evangelion follows emotion over the rational mind. In other words, in NGE Evangelion, certain character interaction can be seen as downright bizarre or out of place, because the interaction is intended to be interpreted or analyzed to understand both the context but also the meaning behind it. While in Rebuild of Evangelion, the character interaction is much more tied with the personality having to cope with other personalities and showcase the emotional development between the characters. The same can be said about the Evangelion world. It seems Rebuild of Evangelion is structured to highlight the artistic beauty of Evangelion, such as the new angel designs, more details on the angels, and overall a huge overhaul in animation effect, how the forward impact is done, and the post-impact world. While in Neo's Evangelion, as the series progresses, more scenes feels out of place, bizarre, and some would even argue that the scenes are more impactful, and also opening the door to people analyzing and interpreting the scenes as they like. While I understand for some it might be frustrating that Rebuild of Evangelion doesn't approach the Evangelion world in a more analytic approach like Neo's Evangelion does, the problem is that the approach that Rebuild of Evangelion takes isn't even trying to take the same approach as Neo's Evangelion did. Instead, it embraces its own approach. In the end, whether or not Rebuild of Evangelion movies is good or not is entirely subjective, but doing a comparison to Neo's Evangelion and stating it's bad simply because it lacks narrative, and or claiming it's an insult to any long-term fan of Evangelion, I think is similar to a child throwing a temper tantrum when they didn't get exactly what they wanted. Personally, I love both works for different reasons, and recommend anyone who watches anime or reads manga to put both Neo's Evangelion manga and anime version and Rebuild of Evangelion in your backlog. And that's it for this video. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you all next year.